Good evening. I am hereby calling to order the March 25th, 2019 meeting of Mayfield Heights City Council. Lisa, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ballestrea?
Present.
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mrs. Finney? Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Teresi?
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Next on our agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes from our March 11, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting. I hope that everyone has had time to read them over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mr. Ballestrea. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Mrs. Tressi, abstain.
I was absent from the meeting.
These minutes are approved as written. Next is the approval of the minutes of our March 11, 2019 council meeting, and I hope that everyone's had time to read them over. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mr. Ballestrea. Are there any changes, amendments, or deletions to these minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Abstain.
Abstain. These minutes are approved as written. Next, we'll move to correspondence and announcements. And does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? We don't have any, so we're going to go to the reports of the officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you. Good evening. Just wanted to announce that we have a couple emails that I received over the past week about some events that may be of interest to our residents. The first is the Cuyahoga County Department of Sustainability and the nonprofit Solar United Neighbors are sponsoring free informational meetings for residents interested in solar power for their homes and businesses. This is a great opportunity to learn about the financial incentives and savings offered by this environmentally friendly emerging technology. So the meeting will take place Thursday, April 25th at the Mayfield branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Library, which is 500 Som Center Road, from 6 till 8 p.m. Also, we received the 2018 annual report for the city of Mayfield Heights from the County Department of Public Works. It highlights a lot of the maintenance that they've been able to do on our sewers. Some of the highlights were they jet cleaned 70,565 feet of sanitary and storm sewers, and they also performed a television inspection of 62,000 feet of sanitary and storm sewers. So all of those details are available on the Cuyahoga County website. On March 21st, we hosted the Euclid Creek Watershed Council here in our council chambers. The Watershed Program Manager gave a presentation to council, to the Euclid Creek Council on the program, 2018 programs, projects, and partnerships that they were able to secure. We were informed that all the MCM1 and MCM2 annual reports are complete and that the 2019 PIPE work plan was approved at the February 21st PIPE committee meeting. This year's theme is runoff reduction. And then lastly, we held a Mayfield Heights Connectivity Study Core Group meeting that was very productive. The idea behind the study is to connect our residents to amenities throughout our city through walking and bike paths. This is a strategic plan that has long-term and short-term goals, and I urge all of our residents to express your opinions on the plan and let us know your priorities. There is a final community engagement session April 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the DeJohn Community Center, and we will share the plan recommendations, review priorities, and discuss next steps. we do need your input. We would love to have more input from our residents on the plan. So you could preview the final draft plan and let us know what you think. If you go to our website, you'll see a link there. And there's also a survey. We'd love to get your opinion on the survey. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Moving to Acting Director of Law, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. The law director is pleased to report that it's warm and sunny in Hilton Head, and he'll see y'all when he gets back.
Thank you. That's not what we wanted to hear. Okay, Director of Finance, Mrs. Fagan.
Thank you. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to reports of committees, commissions, and boards, starting with the Building Committee, which is me. I have not had a meeting, so I have no report this evening. Are there any questions for me? Okay. Finance and Audit Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance and Audit has not met, and I do not have a report, but I would like to note that the 2019 appropriations is on the agenda tonight, and we can address it when it comes forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Seeing none, we'll move to Legislative Committee, Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've had no meeting, so therefore I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Tressi? Public Works and Service, Mr. Balestreo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Public Works Committee did meet last week. The committee has decided to institute the sidewalk program with hopes that it will be this year. Many ideas were exchanged and types of programs, funding, et cetera, were discussed. Council does not have those minutes as of yet. Another meeting will be held to finalize a program when we receive more info that will be obtained from the Service Department as well as from the city engineer. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Balestreo? Parks and Recreation Committee, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resident registration for day camp, swim lessons, and pool passes begins on Saturday, April 6th from 8 to 10:30 a.m. at the Ross DeJohn Community Center. Please visit the website for more details. The Pancake Breakfast. Join Mayor DeSico and City Council on Sunday, April 7th from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. for all-you-can-eat pancakes, French toast, and sausage. Tickets can be purchased in advance from the mayor or any member of council, Park and Rec Commission member, or City Hall. Pre-sale tickets are $5 per person, $6 at the door. Kids 6 and under eat free. CATS, the Citizen Academy for Teen Students. Mayfield Heights Police Department will be holding this program modeled after the Citizens Police Academy for teens in the Mayfield School District and who have an interest in a career in law enforcement or just a desire to learn the whys and hows of being a police officer. It will meet on Saturday, April 6th and 13th from 9:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. is $15 per teen. Call the Recreation Department for more information or to register at 440-442-2627. Our next adult afternoon out is on Tuesday, April 9th from 12 to 2 p.m. at the DeJohn Community Center. The cost is $10 in advance. Registration is required. Join us for the Spring Fling. Menu is kielbasa, Brussels sprouts, and potato skillet. Dessert is coffee and water. Entertainment by Sam Fosh. The Bunny Brunch will be Saturday, April 13th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the DeJohn Community Center. Tickets are $7 per person. Pre-registration is required. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any questions? Safety and Transportation, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Board of Zoning, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Board of Zoning did meet on March 12th. There are several items on the agenda that we can address when they come forth. I encourage all applicants to address council at this public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Planning Commission, Mr. Bellistrea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Planning Commission did not have an agenda, therefore I have no report. We did not meet.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Bellistrea? We will now proceed to the public portion of the meeting. Pursuant to City Code, each person will be allotted 5 minutes to speak with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council and come with your concerns. Please know that there are no personal attacks or comments that will be allowed. Also, if you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized. Approach the podium, state your name and address for record. And now we will begin. It is 7:12.
Good evening, I'm Joan Gotchling. I'm the president of the Mayfield Township Historical Society. I'm here to thank the mayor and the council for their generous donation grant that they give us every year. That support really helps us keep moving. This year again, the third graders from Mayfield and St. Francis will be coming for a tour, part of their curriculum. That grant helps to pay for some of the materials that we give them. We also use it for programming for our speakers for our meetings, which are open to everybody in the township, which includes Mayfield Heights, Mayfield Village, Gates Mills, and Highland Heights. So the Mayfield Heights residents are part of the Mayfield Township. People get confused sometimes and think it's just Mayfield Village, but it isn't. This is also our 200th anniversary of the township. It was founded in 1819. So we're going to do several activities. One at the community days, we'll have a tent up, and we're going to have a time capsule that we're going to be putting out. We're going to ask residents of Mayfield Heights to write a question to somebody 50 years from now. Something like, are cars driving themselves, or something like that. So we hope that the residents will be a part of that. Maybe their kids can get to open it in 50 years and see what their parents wrote. We're also asking kids to write questions too. We also encourage you as you go out in the community, the fire, the chief, police, the service department, the councilman, you're talking to people and children, maybe they need to do a service project. Or you see that one retiree on your street that isn't going on a Viking River cruise this year and looking for a few hours of volunteer service. You're the ones that reach out in the community a lot. Maybe you could send some people to our Historical Society for a little bit of, volunteering. We also have our house open for any of your committee meetings. If you'd like to come down, we'll give you some nice snacks, coffee, tea, ladies' home-cooked desserts, and we'll set up tables for you. You can have one of your meetings in our house. Just let me know. So thank you very much for your kind consideration again this year. The money will be going to good use.
Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you. Mr. Ward.
I just wanted to follow up from the committee of the whole last on the 11th, and just let you know that I've talked to 2 companies to conduct surveys. One of them has reached back out to me, and the point that he wanted me to know is that there are 2 types of surveys that we could have done. We can have an informational survey where you put this out on the website, emails, and just have people fill it out and tabulate the forms from there. That's really informational in nature only, and the other type is more of a statistically valid survey, and that what they do is they get the demographics down for your city, so they're not going to take a whole bunch of kids and their families and disregard the senior citizens. They're going to look at where you live in the city, and if you have kids, your sex, your race, all those things that make a survey statistically valid. So obviously there's more price associated with that, he's gonna look into it a little bit more and get back to me, so just kinda wanted to keep everyone on the same page with where I'm going with that.
Anyone have any questions, Mr. Ward, while he's up here? Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard this evening? Okay, at 7:16, we're gonna close the public portion. Oop. We're not gonna close the public portion. Scratch that. Sorry.
My name is Valerie Maria. I live at 1303 Genesee Avenue, and I'm here about the fence variation. I just want to address everybody.
Okay, if we have any questions when it comes before us, then we can ask you then.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Now we're gonna close the public portion. It's 7:17. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we are gonna move to the resolutions. Tonight, we have two tabled resolutions that, and because council did not take action within 60 days from the decision of the BZA, that decision will stand. We need to remove these from the table this evening, and would Mrs. Sabetta like to make a motion to do that? For Resolution 2019-13 and Resolution 2019-14.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to remove resolution numbers 2019-13 and 2019-14 from the table.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This motion is carried and these resolutions have been removed from the table. The next three resolutions pertain to the same applicant regarding the fence. Resolution 2019-25, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Timothy and Lisa Zimmer, 1323 Wharton Boulevard, a variance to allow a non-conforming solid wood fence to remain along the rear property line. Cuyahoga County Permit Parcel Number 862-02-05.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mr. Belistrea. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi,
Second.
second by Mr. Belistrea. All members were copied with the BZA minutes. Mrs. Sabetta, is there anything you would like to add in this resolution?
Okay, the applicant felt that this was a repair and not a replacement. They are here tonight. They felt that 50% of the fence was rotted, so they replaced it. The committee could see the confusion between the repair and replacement, and the applicant, we agreed with the applicant that it would be a hardship to remove the whole fence.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This motion is carried. Resolution 2019-26, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals in the City of Mayfield Heights in denying to Timothy and Lisa Zimmer, 1323 Wharton Boulevard, a variance to allow a non-conforming solid wood fence to remain to the right of the front of the house, Cuyahoga County Permit Parcel Number 862-02-051.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. Belistrea. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mr. Belstrade. Is there any discussion, or does any member have any comments? Ms. Sabetta?
Yes, the request for the variant for the front is a stockade full replacement of the front fence, the panel, and the gate. It's not a required type or a repair. The majority of the committee did consider this a full replacement of the area, and it needed a permit, which they didn't have. It was a denial. The committee did not see the practical difficulty here.
Are there any other further questions? Lisa, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This resolution has been approved. Resolution 2019-27, Mr. Smidlin.
Thank you. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Timothy and Lisa Zimmer, 1323 Wharton Boulevard, a variance to allow a non-conforming solid wood fence to remain to the right of the front of the house, contingent upon making the fence material conforming. Cuyahoga County Permit Parcel Number 86202-051.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Belstrade, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. Mano. Discussion. Mrs. Sabetta, would you like to add to this?
Yes, this is a request for no setback from the front of the house, the fence panel, and the gate. The ordinance states an 8-foot setback is required. The back concrete slab walkway flows into a patio. There's extensive mature landscaping, beds that would need to be removed and rerouted. The neighbor wrote a letter to request that the fence stay at the present due to her side windows. They're being covered for security. This fence extends up to her house. The committee saw the practical difficulty here, and since the required fence would be up front, the beautification was considered. So it was a unanimous approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Resolution 2019-27 has been approved. The next three resolutions pertain to the same applicant regarding building a shed. Beginning with Resolution 2019-28, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Thomas and Mary Schneider, 6570 Ridgeberry Boulevard, a variance to construct a new storage shed on the property, Cuyahoga County Permit Parcel Number 862-19002, larger in area than that allowed by the codified ordinances.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mr. Balestria. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. Balestria. All members were copied on these BZA minutes as well. Mrs. Sabetta, would you like to add to this?
Thank you. This is an 18 by 34, 13 feet high, 432 square foot, single level on a 2-acre lot. The applicant to remove all other temporary sheds in the yard. The garage being shallow, only 2 cars can fit, no storage available. The shed would be set back 60 feet from the house and over 400 feet from the back property line. The neighbor has a similar shed. The committee saw the practical difficulty. It was a unanimous vote to approve. This would go for all three, 2019-28, 2019-29, and 2019-30.
What was the size of the shed that you have, that you read?
18 by 34.
It
It's
states 18
24?
by 24.
Excuse me. Need
That's
my
okay.
glasses.
No, that's okay.
18
Just
by
wanted to
12.
make sure we corrected that.
Okay.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this resolution has been adopted. Resolution 2019-29, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights and granting to Thomas and Mary Schneider, 6570 Ridgeberry Boulevard, a variance to construct a new storage shed on the property, parcel number 862-19002, longer in length and width than that allowed by the codified ordinances.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestrea, second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mr. Balestrea. Mrs. Sabetta.
I need not repeat. It's exactly what I said. I have nothing more to add. The applicant is here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Lisa, can I have a roll call on the motion to approve?
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2019-29 has been approved. Resolution 2019-30, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights and granting to Thomas and Mary Schneider, 6570 Ridgeberry Boulevard, a variance to construct a new storage shed on the property, parcel number 862-19002, taller than that allowed by the codified ordinances.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestrea, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi and second by, let's look this way, Mr. Mano. Okay. All right, do we have any discussion? Mr. DeJohn?
Yes, I'd just like to know why the reason for the height of the shed.
Would you like to ask the applicant?
Only if Madam Chairman, Schmitz would come up.
Mr. Schneider, please come up to the podium. Please state your name and address.
My name is Thomas Schneider, 6570 Ridgeberry Boulevard.
Thank you.
The height of the shed has to be so, it is a barn style, and to go to the edges of the building, that has to be the height. Otherwise, the pitch would be too flat for snow.
Thank you.
Might as well stay there. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Schneider? Okay, thank you. All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2019-30 has been adopted. Moving to Resolution 2019-31, Mr. Schmidlin.
A A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights and granting to Valerie Gianmaria, say that right, 1303 Genesee Avenue, a variance to place a 32 feet of 6-foot high solid vinyl fence similar in style and material to the existing chain link fence on the property line, parcel number 86202-017.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Bellistrand, second by Mr. Mano. Mrs. Sabetta?
Thank you. The request for the 6-foot-high, 32-length vinyl privacy fence next to a neighboring chain link fence. The applicant's north property line has natural fence of arborvitae trees. The south side has no room to plant. The driveway is too close. The applicant cannot extend it back to the property line. It's too tight a fit, and there's no possible maintenance room. The fence will be elevated the 32 feet to maintain the property line it stands on now. And it's a unanimous approval. They felt that there was no other way for her to get the privacy that she needed. It's too close to the garage and the driveway.
Are there any further questions? Council, Mr. Bellistrand.
This is better. On her drawing, it shows the location of the fence, and then it looks like a 6-foot gap between the chain link fence of her neighbor. And who is taking care of that? Do we know, is that the property owner that we're granting this variance for? Is that her property? Is that off the property line, or is that the neighbor's property? I just was wondering who's going to maintain that area in between those fences.
The applicant stated that she would be maintaining, and that's why she would elevate it.
And that's her property?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chairman. It's okay. Mrs. Sabetta, is it 6 inches or 6 feet between the chain link fence and the vinyl fence?
Okay,
Looks like 6 inches on the drawing. And then it looks like it's written on the application 6 inches. It's hard to tell between fences.
It says 6 feet on
Does that look like? And it looks like 6
Miss-
inches on the drawing.
it. Mrs. Gianmaria, would you like to come up and tell us?
By hand.
It's not a lawnmower.
Yeah, it's definitely not 6 feet. It's
6 inches
Very
between.
small.
Yes.
And is, may I ask a question?
Please.
How will you maintain that little, 6 inches is,
Well, they would have it 3 inches above the ground, so I would just weed whack it under there.
Underneath?
Yeah, there's not that much grass where it would be not maintainable at all. That wouldn't be an issue at all.
Are there any further questions for the applicant?
6 inches.
Okay, thank you. All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this motion has been adopted. Resolution 2019-32, Mr. Schmidlin.
A resolution accepting the bid of Chagrin Valley Paving, Inc. for the resurfacing, reconstruction, and repairs with asphalt concrete and Portland cement concrete and concrete joint repairs of Lander Road from the I-271 bridge to Cedar Road and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria,
Second.
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Everyone received a letter of recommendation and bid tabs from Mr. Gerson showing Chagrin Valley Paving was the lowest bid received for $431,475.11. Does any member have any questions about this? Okay. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belestria,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this resolution has been adopted. Moving to Resolution 2019-33, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. A resolution accepting the bid of American Paving, Inc. for the crack sealing of various streets and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belestria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Everyone received a letter of recommendation and a bid tab also from Mr. Gerson showing that American Paving was the lowest bid received for $71,382. Is there any questions with this? Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Am I correct in assuming we have $800,000 in the road program? So if you add these two bids together, it's $502,857. What do we plan on doing with the additional $297,000? Mayor, I can see you.
Madam President? Joe's chomping at the bit to tell you that answer, but I'm sure we'll find, we'll put it to good use. There's a lot of roads that need help, but is that all you're gonna say? All right.
So
Words
it'll
right
go
out of
to,
his mouth.
Sorry, Joe.
he just took your thunder. So we will put it to, this year, repairing other roads?
Okay, any further questions?
I'm just
Mr. Balestria?
surprised that the American Paving came in half of what the city engineer's estimate was, as well as the next bidder is twice as much as American Paving, and we've used that company before, correct, Joe? American Paving, so they're reputable, and I would assume we've used them for, I'm just leery when somebody bids that low. Kind of
Mr. Gerson, just come to the podium. Thank you.
raises a red flag a little bit.
Dan Gerson, city engineer, UPD Group. You are correct. Historically, when we've done the crack sealing, we've only received one bidder. This year, we actually had 4 bidders that bought the package. We had 2 people actually submitted the bid. American Paving, I have not worked with them before, but they do a substantial amount of work out of Columbus area. That's where they're headquartered out of. They've met all the specs. They've met all the required documents, so I'm willing to give them a chance and see if they can do the work for well under what I thought it might cost.
Mr. Balestria?
And have they done any work in the city at all for us before?
I have not done work with them before, but I don't know if they've done it in the past. So.
Okay.
Mrs. Tressi?
Mr. Gerson, will we be doing any crack sealing on Som Center this year?
Not from this contract, no.
Will we be doing any with any contractor?
I'm not sure. That may be something we look at with the additional funds that are.
Additional money. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, could you look at that corner by Som Center in Mayfield,
Absolutely,
by Walmart and BP station?
absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Balestria?
I'm just gonna say, city engineer will be going out in the spring and reevaluating all our streets, so I'm sure we can get some input from them as to what can be done this year with the finances that are remaining.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll wait to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Gerson. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, this motion has been adopted. Move to Resolution 2019-34, Mr. Smidlin.
Thank you. A resolution authorizing the mayor to issue a purchase order to Nick Merritt's Marshall Ford Lincoln for the purchase of 2 vehicles for the Building and Recreation Department and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by
Second.
Mr. Belistrea. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Tressi. Everyone received the memorandum from Mrs. Fegan with the quotes for these 2 vehicles attached. Are there any further questions about these vehicles for this, Mr. DeJohn?
Yes, I just need to know, if somebody can answer this question, is why do they need to be Ford Fusions, a larger car than a Ford Focus? You know, we do have some budget problems. I would think that this is a way to help solve our budget problems by taking a less expensive car. Why do they need to be a Ford Fusion?
Madam President, if I could. The difference was not that much between them, and the resale was gonna be better and the Fusion. So we thought it was a better route to go that way. When we do trade them in, they'd be worth more.
Mr. DeJohn?
But we don't trade them in, we just pass them along, is that correct, to other departments?
Not all the time. Though, the 2 that we're replacing, we are. Those are being handed down. Because those are not really, I don't want to use the word worth much anymore, but, you know, they're, the model and, you take that into account. So the car's really not worth that much anymore.
Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Excuse me. Do we know the amount of miles that we have on these vehicles that we're trading or handing them down? I know the police vehicles.
Off the top of my head, no. I could let you know that later.
And who in the rotation will get them? It says they're gonna go into rotation to who?
I think we're still deciding who's gonna get those yet, because we gotta figure out what cars we're gonna get rid of then.
Oh, so you'll get rid of 2 more and then
Hopefully we should.
will fit
yeah,
in that
yeah.
slot? Thank you.
I could say that I could see the recreation director having a bigger car. I see that he moves a lot of stuff from the community center to events and different things at the park. So I can understand why his would be a little bit bigger in size. Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question, just kind of along with Mr. DeJohn's. Since they're they're not used like police vehicles where they put on so many miles, could we go longer than a 4-year period? Those are 2015. Can you go like 6 years? I mean, there are vehicles that are better at, 80,000 miles than 50,000 miles. If you're not gonna put a lot of maintenance into them, can you go longer with these vehicles? I mean, I know they'll have no
Madam Chair.
value when they're done, but.
Right, well, what we do is just evaluate all the cars, what needs to go, and if you get rid of cars, how are you gonna hand them down and what would be their replacement? So could they last longer? Sure, but in this case, hopefully these will last longer. 4 years is pretty good, actually, for the wear and tear that they get, not like police cars.
Right.
But they do get a lot of wear and tear, and, we just evaluate every year, hey, which cars do we really need to get rid of? And how are we gonna replace those, and how are we gonna hand those down? So,
Any further questions? All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This resolution 2019-34 has been adopted. Moving to resolution 2019-35, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. A resolution accepting the proposal from Paladin Protective Systems, Inc. for audio-video upgrades at the Ross C. DeJohn Community Center.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestreo, second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mrs. Sabetta. There was a memorandum that we received from Mrs. Fagan. A quote for this equipment is attached to this memorandum. Mrs. Fagan, would you like to add anything to this, or the mayor?
This is just a very much needed upgrade to the audio visual system over there. Anytime we have any kind of event over there, it's extremely difficult to control the audio and get it to where we want it. So it's sorely needed. And before Mr. DeJohn brings it up, we do have 2 bids coming in for smaller fixes for council chambers, less expensive fixes. So they are coming. I promised you I'd look into that before the end of the year. So we are, and one of them hopefully is this company. I talked to them, Paladin. They're just not too sure. They do projectors. That's what that part of the this contract is, but they're not too sure about being able to do the video portion of our council. So they're looking into that. So that is one quote hopefully we'll get, and Mrs. Benedetti has a Ms. Benedetti has a quote coming from iVideo. Yeah. So those are coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If in fact, down the road, we were to make upgrades to the community building, will this be able to be utilized, or will we have to buy a whole new system? Can we expand this? Can we
Madam Chair?
keep it? Can we?
Yeah, these are things that could be taken out, you know, and put anywhere. If we upgrade the building, if we build a new building, whatever we do, these can be reused, yeah. Especially, it's just speakers and microphones, and you know, the cabling might be something that needs to be redone depending on where we put it. But as far as the projector, speakers and microphones, yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Okay, Lisa, can I have a roll call on the motion to approve?
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belstria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This resolution has been adopted. We have 2 ordinances on tonight's agenda. We'll start off with ordinance number 2019-7, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. An ordinance making appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Mayfield Heights, state of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019. Second reading.
Thank you. This ordinance was put on first reading at the last meeting by Mr. DeJohn so that all of council could be in attendance. However, Mrs. Finney is absent this evening, but the budget needs to be adopted by March 31st. So, is there a motion at this time to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belstria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mr. Balestria. Everyone at the last meeting had received the minutes from the Finance and Audit Committee meeting and emails from Mrs. Fagan, sent in response with all of her additional questions. Thank you very much for all that you did with that. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Fagan this evening? Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Fagan. It was easy to read. I think you did a great job. I thank you for answering all my questions while I was out of town, and having me scroll through 54 pages. And I thought, did she really answer my question in there? I do have just one question, actually, and it pertains to, I guess the question is, why did we put all of the employees under the mayor's category? You're shaking your head. You must have known someone was going to ask that question. I mean, what is the reasoning behind that?
Actually, I thought the question was gonna come in a different direction. That was a decision that was made back in 2018 for better organizational structure for City Hall. So we're just finally now in 2019 making everything follow financially that plan that had already been approved.
And am I allowed to ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
Don't want to get yelled at. Are all of the employees under the mayor's category, are they all union employees or non-union employees?
They are all non-union.
All of them are non-union?
They're all non-union, all the positions, yes. I believe.
Yes. Is that the answer?
You have further questions, go ahead, because you weren't here.
Right. No, Mrs. Fagan and I went back and forth, and she answered 99.9%. I just was wondering why we changed it. And it went from $49,900 to $650,000, I believe. Am I correct? No. Did I not read that? $398,000?
Madam Chair.
It went to $398,000.
That's because the original mayor's office budget was just the mayor and the secretary. So those three positions, oh, it was just me, I'm sorry, that's right. Mary Beth wasn't included in there. So yeah, all those were included in, there are no new salaries, they're just moved from City Hall to the mayor's office to better reflect the organization in the office.
So the new proposed 2019 budget under salaries and wages is $398,000, all under your category. Am I
Right, because
correct?
everybody is now in that office. We haven't added any positions, new full-time equivalents. They've just been added, taken from other positions and moved into the mayor's office. I didn't get a raise, don't worry.
Well, I wasn't worried, really. I was just wondering. Yeah, that's right. No, I was seriously just wondering why it went from $49,000 to $398,000. And I think that's the only question I have. Thank you very much.
And I do, we're gonna be working on the budget earlier this year, is that correct?
Yes.
Sometime in September, so this could be done before the end of the year. Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, roll call.
Madam.
Ooh. Mr. DeJohn.
So I've been asking for budget cuts for the last 2 or 3 years. And I see this budget is 2% more this year than it was last year. Now we're already almost at the end of the first quarter. We have to approve this under the gun because it has to be approved by the 30th of this month. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'm very disappointed that I don't see any budget restraints whatsoever, whether it's a hiring freeze or freezing the departments at whatever they budgeted for last year. I just don't understand that when we know we're going to have budget problems down the road. We asked the citizens of Mayfield Heights for a tax increase, but yet we're not showing them any budget restraints. You know, I am forced to vote for this time, but in September or at the end of this year, I won't vote for another budget unless there is some budget restraints. Thank you.
Mrs. Fagan.
Thank you. When we approached the budget this year, we talked to each of the department heads and we asked them to be very mindful of the budgets, hold the line to last year's numbers wherever they could. Some of the increases were due to collective bargaining agreements where those were put in place and those wages were in place and had to be put into the budget. And there are no additional positions in this budget this year. The only additional position that was requested and was filled is the one part-time position that will become the deputy clerk of council. There are no other new positions that have been asked for or put into this budget.
Mr. DeJong?
Yeah, well, I understand that, but what I was looking for hiring freeze, you know, budget restraints through attrition, not filling positions, in some of the departments. I think that's a great way of trying to save money, you know, a lot of money, but I guess, the administration doesn't see it that way. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mayor?
There are, we have, I'm not sure when you say a hiring freeze. We have not added any positions, new positions, as Mrs. Fagan said, we've only replaced. So I'm not sure if you are suggesting that, you know, we cut personnel, we cut fire, we cut police, or we cut our service department, which gives tremendous amount of service to our residents, and I think is a hallmark of our city, is our police department, our fire department, and our service department. So, I mean, if you are suggesting cutting some personnel from those departments, well, I wish you would say that instead of insinuating that we are not holding the line. We are holding the line. The line is being held exactly where it was last year, except for the increases in the collective bargaining agreement. And other than that, there's no, I would say, there is no out-of-line spending at all. We have done what we've done in the past, which is always to look at the budget and be very responsible with everyone's budget, not putting fat in there, you know, not putting things that we don't believe each department really needs to run their department efficiently and effectively for our residents. So I understand what you're saying, but I think you're insinuating we're not being fiscally responsible, and I think you're very wrong there.
Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you tell me what the 2019 budget is, the total budget?
Total for all funds is $35,463,970.
That's 2019. And what was it in 2018?
The 2018 final budget was $34,815,753.
And this year, will we be looking at the healthcare cost to see if we can do something earlier? I know, I think we did healthcare very late in the year, if I'm not mistaken. Will we be looking at?
Absolutely. This is our first year in the new healthcare consortium. Part of the agreement there is that we will have that renewal come back earlier in the year, so we have more time to consider options.
And will we send it out to bid other than, I know where it is right now with one supplier, and I know that supplier sends it out to others. Will we look at any other supplier that might have, you know, different coverages or companies that they deal with?
We will look at every possibility that is available to us under the consortium. There are certain requirements within the consortium as to how often we can go out to bid, but definitely we will look at everything possible and ways to look to save money.
Because that's also a huge expense. And I think last year we had a very small increase, but you know, you can't ever bank on that small increase to move forward.
We also had a very, I'm sorry. We also had a very, the word that's coming to mind is horrific, and I hate to say that, but we had a very bad year last year, health insurance wise. We had many claims that were over very high dollar level claims, and
it will come back much higher again this year because of that, when they
Well,
look
no, it came back this year high because of those claims last year.
last year.
Yes.
Thank you very
Any
much.
further questions? I just have one. Are there any retirements coming up this year? Because I know sometimes that reflects in,
Definitely, we know Lisa's
Oh.
retiring. We know that, Mr. Tribby retired. Other than that, we do have money, built into the budget for those possible retirements, but have I identified exactly who they are? No, we have no formal notifications.
all right, thank you. All right. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes,
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 2019-9, Mr. Schmidlin.
Thank you. An ordinance amending chapter 1191 of the codified ordinances of the city titled Signs by amending section 1191.10 pertaining to banners on utility poles and declaring an emergency. Second reading, public hearing to be held April 22nd, 2019, at 6:45 p.m.
Is there a motion to place on second reading? Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to place on second reading.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
yes,
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Ordinance 2019-9 will be placed on second reading with a public hearing scheduled for April 22nd at 6:45 p.m. All right, we will move to motions on our agenda next, and Mr. Schmidlin, motion number A.
To advertise for bids for concrete.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Tressi. This is an annual housekeeping item. Do I have any, is there any questions or comments about the bids? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion has been carried. Motion B, Mr. Schmidlin.
To advertise for bids for asphalt.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mrs. Tressi. This is also another housekeeping item. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. This motion has been carried. This time we'll move to new business or concerns or comments from council. Does any, Mrs. Sabetta?
Speaking of the appropriations and the budget, I do want to mention that the departments did come up with over $560,000 in grants. Thank you.
Wow, it's impressive. Okay, any other comments? All right, seeing none at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by,
No, you took the two items off the table this evening.
we did, but it just, they just,
Did you vote on them to do away with them?
I was told no,
No, they expired.
expired, and I was told that they just remain as they
Okay.
are.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay.
I will make a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mrs. Sabetta. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This motion has been approved. Thank you to everyone. We are now adjourned.